Hello and welcome to the Rot-Weiss-Rot Report, the podcast for everyone living and working in Austria. Every week, we cover the most important news and developments, short, clear, and to the point, so you stay on top of what actually affects your work, your paperwork, and your everyday life. Here's what we're covering today. Parliament held a session and passed several decisions that matter for people with lower incomes, including migrants. There's an ongoing dispute about fuel prices. The government is trying to protect consumers, but the big oil companies aren't rushing to comply with the law. Austria also has a new head of public broadcasting. A major trial is underway in one of the federal states, and Vienna is gearing up for one of the biggest cultural events of the year, Eurovision, coming very soon to the Austrian capital. All that and more in today's Rot-Weiss-Rot Report. Let's start with the big story.
The biggest event of the week was the session of Austria's parliament, the Nationalrat, held on Thursday, April 23rd. MPs voted on several key measures, each of which will have a real impact on daily life in Austria. The first decision concerns the so-called housing shield, the Wohnschirm program. Austria launched this program back in 2022 to help people cope with the aftermath of the pandemic and rapidly rising prices. It mainly supports people who can't keep up with rent or utility bills. Originally, Wohnschirm was set to end in late 2026, but MPs voted to extend it by 3 years, through the end of 2029. The government will allocate €28 million per year for the program. The vote was unanimous across all parliamentary parties, which is genuinely rare in Austrian politics. So, who qualifies for Wohnschirm? Even if you're not an Austrian citizen, you may still be eligible. But you'll need a valid residence permit, a rental agreement, and proof of debt. Also keep in mind, this support is only available to people whose income falls below the social minimum, currently around €1,300 per month for a single person and about €2,000 for 2 people. You can't apply on your own. It goes through advisors at Caritas or Volkshilfe, so you'll need to book an appointment first. Bring income statements, proof of your official tenancy, and any letters about outstanding debts. One important note: the money doesn't go to you directly. It's transferred straight to your landlord or energy provider. The program usually covers the full amount of rent arrears to prevent eviction. Legal and court costs are also covered if eviction proceedings have already started. Each case is handled individually, so if you genuinely need this help, don't wait. Start getting your documents together.
Parliament also voted to extend the back-to-school support program, Schulstarthilfe. It too was due to end this year, but the government has budgeted €15 million annually through 2029. The support is paid out twice a year in the form of vouchers or a special payment card worth €150 per child. However, it's only available to families receiving Sozialhilfe, social assistance, or Mindestsicherung, minimum income support. If you're in a difficult financial situation, we'd encourage you to apply as soon as possible. A few more things from Parliament. All parties unanimously passed a resolution reaffirming Austria's position against nuclear energy. As a reminder, Austria is one of very few developed countries to have completely rejected nuclear power, back in 1978. Parliament also amended the Gewerbeordnung, the Trade Regulations Code, in connection with this summer's FIFA World Cup, which will be held in the USA, Canada, and Mexico. Austria is qualifying for the World Cup for the very first time in its history, and the government wants public screenings, known as public viewing events, to be allowed to run longer than current rules permit. The previous maximum was 4 weeks. It will now be extended to 6. This gives restaurants, cafes, and event organizers more flexibility during the tournament. Good to know whether you're a business owner or just a football fan. And on the personnel front, the Österreichischer Rundfunk, ORF, officially elected a new director. The position goes to 63-year-old journalist Ingrid Thurnherr, who over her career has won 9 Romy Awards, the most prestigious prize in Austrian television and film. She now officially leads a media company with an annual budget of over 1 billion euros. At her first press conference, Thurnherr pledged to make public broadcasting more transparent and more connected to its audience. Another big story that's been running all week is the ongoing dispute over fuel prices and the conduct of OMV. This affects every driver in the country, so we'll get into it right now.
The biggest economic story of the week, and probably the loudest scandal of the past month, is the fight over the so-called fuel price brake, or Spritpreisbremse. To understand what's going on, a bit of background. At the start of April, the Austrian government introduced a law requiring major oil companies to cut their profit margin by 5 euro cents per liter of petrol or diesel. Combined with other measures, including a cut in excise duty, fuel prices were supposed to drop by 10 cents per liter. But by mid-April, it emerged that OMV, Austria's largest fuel producer and supplier, is only partially complying. Instead of the required 5-cent reduction, the company is cutting prices by just 2.8 cents. OMV's explanation? More than 60% of Austria's diesel is imported, and foreign suppliers are reportedly refusing to offer discounts. On top of that, the law itself contains a clause that allows companies to skip the price cut if it would deprive them of a reasonable profit. And that's exactly what OMV is invoking. One important piece of context. OMV is partially state-owned. The government holding company Österreichische Beteiligungs AG, OBAG, holds 30% of its shares. In other words, a partly state-owned company is ignoring a government requirement. Predictably, a scandal erupted. Vice-Chancellor and SPO leader Andreas Babler said the company is legally obligated to comply. He pointed out that OMV earned 4.5 billion euros last year, so it can afford to follow the rules. By the end of the month, OMV is due for a formal review. The company must present its Q1 financial results, which may shed more light on the situation. Whether this will affect prices at the pump remains to be seen. For now, fuel costs in Austria, as across Europe, are rising against the backdrop of Middle East tensions and instability in global oil markets. Another economic story involves that same government holding company, OBAG. Think of it as Austria's professional state asset manager. Instead of ministers running factories or oil platforms themselves, a specialist company does it. OBAG has been overseen by the Bundesministerium für Finanzen, BMF, the Finance Ministry, but that's about to change. Management will be transferred to the Ministry of Economic Affairs, Bundesministerium für Arbeit und Wirtschaft, or BMAW. For residents of Austria, this is generally good news. The BMF tends to focus solely on budget revenue. The BMAW has different priorities, including market oversight and price control. Once the transfer happens, the government will have more direct influence over things like fuel prices at OMV stations or internet tariffs at Telekom Austria.
Economy light gets worse. Lufthansa, the parent company of Austrian Airlines, or AUA, is changing the rules for passengers. Unfortunately, not for the better. This applies to the economy light fare. As before, you can bring one small bag that fits under the seat in front of you, free of charge. But now, the airline strictly prohibits placing any item in the overhead compartment for free. If your bag doesn't fit under the seat, you'll pay for it as checked luggage. On top of that, free seat selection during online check-in is being removed. The system will assign you whatever seat is available, and changing it will cost extra. The goal is clearly to push passengers toward the pricier economy classic fare, which includes a full carry-on and checked baggage. If you show up at the gate with a bag that doesn't fit your cheap ticket, the airport fee will be steep. Always check your fare type in your booking confirmation. Job market. Full-time dominates. Finally, an interesting study from the Wirtschaftsbund organization. They analyzed job postings over recent months and found that more than 90% of all open vacancies in Austria are full-time, Vollzeit. If you're job hunting right now, expect most offers to be for 38 or 40 hours a week. Part-time positions, Teilzeit, around 20 to 25 hours, are much harder to find. There are huge waiting lists for those roles, while full-time positions sit open for months. Next up, news directly affecting those living in Austria without Austrian citizenship: migrants, refugees, and foreign nationals.
The Bundesministerium für Inneres, the Federal Interior Ministry, has published its official statistics for the first quarter of 2026. This matters for two groups of people. First, for those waiting for a decision on their asylum application. In Q1, new applications were filed at almost half the rate of a year ago, 2,598 applications compared to 4,756. That's the lowest figure in over 20 years. At the same time, more decisions, both positive and negative, are being issued than new applications are coming in. This means the backlog is gradually shrinking. If your case is being processed, this is theoretically a good sign in terms of timing, though no one can make any guarantees. For those hoping to bring family members to Austria, there is bad news. Austria officially suspended family reunification for people with protected status at the start of the year. The ban runs through July 2026 and, based on available information, may be extended for several more months. In practice, if your spouse or children are currently outside Austria and you hold refugee status or subsidiary protection, you cannot apply for them to join you right now. Exceptions exist only for absolute humanitarian cases, and in the first quarter, only 25 people across the entire country received such an exception. If family reunification is your situation, we strongly recommend consulting a lawyer or a rights-based organization to stay on top of any changes after July.
Austria's ZARA organization, Zivilcourage und Antirassismusarbeit, Civil Courage and Anti-Racism Work, nearly shut down this week. This is the main center where migrants and foreigners can get free legal advice in cases of discrimination. The Bundesministerium für Familien und Jugend, the Federal Ministry for Family and Youth, abruptly withdrew its funding. As a result, 18 staff members received redundancy notices, and the organization's support for victims of racism was set to end. The situation was rescued by politicians from the SPÖ. Vice-Chancellor Andreas Babler and Minister Eva Maria Holzleitner found money in their respective departmental budgets. The Bundesministerium für Kunst, Kultur, öffentlichen Dienst und Sport contributed 150,000 euros, and Minister Holzleitner's office, which handles women's rights, matched that amount. These funds specifically support the Gegen Hass im Netz program, a counseling line for people targeted by online hate. ZARA now has funding to operate through the end of 2026. The question of stable long-term funding, however, remains unresolved. Politicians have promised to develop a plan so the center doesn't have to rely on one-off payments every year. For the average person, this means Austria still has one place where you can get free legal advice about racism.
A reminder about a change that has already come into force, affecting so-called freie Dienstnehmer, free contract workers. This is a special category of workers who are neither traditional employees nor self-employed. Previously, they had significantly less legal protection. Now, collective agreements can be applied to this category, and the terms and conditions for ending a working relationship have been clarified. If you work as a freie Dienstnehmer, talk to your employer or a lawyer about which changes apply to your contract.
Vienna News. Vienna wants to close the Imam Ali Islamic Center, IZIA, in the 21st district of Floridsdorf. Parliament voted unanimously to have the center investigated. It's a rare moment of cross-party agreement, from the Greens to the far right. Why? There are suspicions that the center has covert ties to Hezbollah, which is banned in Austria. Politicians believe the center is not just a mosque, but a mouthpiece for the Iranian government in Vienna. In February, a large fight broke out near the center between Iranians who support their country's government and those who oppose it. What does this mean right now? The center won't be shut down overnight. Parliament's decision is an instruction to the Interior Ministry, BMI, to gather legally sound evidence of violations. Police and intelligence services must investigate whether radical ideas are being promoted there and whether the center is receiving money from foreign intelligence services. If you attend this center or live nearby, be aware that police attention to this location is currently at its highest. The authorities stress they are not fighting Islam or Iranians in general. The concern is about political influence and security.
Vienna's budget crisis. Vienna is facing a massive budget shortfall, and the city has switched to austerity mode. It needs to find 1.35 billion euros to balance its books. What does this mean for residents? The era of traveling for a euro a day, as local politicians put it, is over. The city can no longer subsidize Wiener Linien at its previous levels, so ticket prices will go up. Parking will get more expensive. The city is raising parking fees and the cost of residents' permits. Tourists will also pay more. The hotel accommodation tax is being raised so that visitors contribute more to the city budget. The city is trying to protect core social support, things like housing assistance and free kindergartens. But critics point out that when everything around you gets more expensive, transport, parking, services, the poorest residents still end up worse off. Supporters of the cuts counter, if austerity doesn't start now, the city will simply go bankrupt, and then hospitals and schools will have to close. On a more positive note, Vienna is actively preparing for Eurovision. We'll cover that in detail in the culture section.
News from the federal states. New jobs are coming to Upper Austria. American tech giant Google will open a major industrial facility next year in the town of Kronstorf in the Enns district, a large data center. For the region, this is a significant win. Hundreds of jobs will be created, from engineers to security staff and technical personnel. In Lower Austria, drones are now being used to fight wildfires. Dry weather has triggered fires in local forests. Firefighters are deploying drones equipped with special cameras that can detect hotspots before any smoke is visible. This allows fires to be extinguished before they spread and keeps firefighters safer. Eisenstadt, the capital of Burgenland, is about to become a TV star. ORF2 is filming a new season of Zurück zur Natur, Back to Nature, there. It's great publicity for the region and should bring more tourists to local craftspeople and farmers. In Western Austria, Tyrol and Salzburg, the winter tourism season is giving way to summer. Hotels are deep in renovation and cleaning mode, preparing for summer visitors. If you're planning a getaway, here's a useful tip. April and May is the low season, Nebensaison. Hotel prices in the Alps are currently 30 to 50% lower than in February or July. This is the best time to stay at a luxury spa hotel for the price of a regular one.
Culture and entertainment. Eurovision preparations are in full swing. One of Vienna's old tram routes, Line 49, has temporarily become a song tram. It runs between the Volkstheater district and the Stadthalle, the venue for the contest, with festival-themed decor and music playing on board. It's just one example of how Vienna is trying to make Eurovision feel real for all its residents. The contest runs from May 11th to 16th, and it's a milestone edition. Austria won the right to host after Austrian performer JJ won the 2025 contest in Basel with his song Wasted Love. This is Austria's third time hosting Eurovision. The previous editions were in 1967 and 2015, both also in Vienna. The venue is the Wiener Stadthalle, a large sports and concert arena in Vienna's 15th district, with a capacity of over 16,000. There's been controversy, too. Only 35 countries are competing this year, fewer than usual. Several countries boycotted. Ireland, Iceland, the Netherlands, Slovenia, and Spain all withdrew in protest over Israel's inclusion, given the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Israel is still competing. Austria will be represented at its home contest by young performer Cosmo, a 19-year-old musician, with his song Tanzschein. Bookmakers don't currently rate Cosmo among the favorites, but home crowd support could make a real difference. The central gathering point for all fans will be the Eurovision Village, a large open-air fan zone at Rot-Weiss-Rot, the square in front of City Hall. Concerts, screenings, and entertainment events will take place there. Entry is free. For music fans, it's a celebration. But if you live in Vienna or plan to visit in May, be ready for changes to public transport schedules, higher prices at restaurants, and queues pretty much everywhere.
Also worth noting, a new exhibition has opened at Mauthausen. The museum at the former Nazi concentration camp Mauthausen-Gusen has launched a special exhibition called Objects Speak: Archaeology of the Camp System. It presents the results of over 20 years of archaeological research at former campsites. An important exhibition for anyone interested in the history of World War II and its aftermath. The Mauthausen Museum is located in Upper Austria and is open to visitors year-round.
And finally, a story you probably didn't expect to hear from Austria. At the end of April, medical experts issued a warning about a potential malaria risk. They say that climate change and rising average temperatures are creating conditions in which certain mosquito species capable of carrying malaria could theoretically appear in some Austrian regions. For now, this is only a potential risk, not actual reported cases. But if you're planning a trip to a tropical country or have recently returned from one, see a doctor if you notice any unusual symptoms.
Take care of yourselves, and we'll be back next week to keep you informed. Subscribe to the Rot-Weiss-Rot Report, your weekly guide to living and working in Austria. Find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.